the limitation with Markdown is that Markdown is actually flat. If you go to the abstract syntax tree of Markdown, it's a list of block components. You have like headings, paragraph, and you have the root and all these block elements. You don't have nesting.
Hello, welcome to DevTools-fm. This is a podcast about developer tools and the people who make them. I'm Andrew, and this is my co-host, Justin.
Hey, everyone. We're really excited to have Rodrigo Pombo on. So, Rodrigo, you are very well known for creating CodeHike, which is a tool that I'm excited to talk about. It's probably one of the most interesting code documentation tools out there right now. But before we dive into that, we'd like to hear a little bit more about you. So would you like to take a moment to tell our audience a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, hi. So thank you for inviting me first. Nice to be here. I'm Rodrigo Pombo. Most people call me Pombo. I've been doing software development for the last 16 years, I think. I used to have a normal job in Argentina, where I'm from, until I quit in 2018. I took some kind of sabbatical time there, spent most of the time exploring developer tools, open source, mostly around the React ecosystem. Fast forward to now, after all those years of exploration and several open source projects, I think I found kind of my niche, which roughly we can say is around UIs for technical content. Now I spend most of my time working on CodeHike, as you mentioned, and also doing related work to that.
Cool. So for our listeners who might not know what CodeHike is, can you explain to them the type of documentation experiences that you can produce with it?
Yeah, so it kind of mutated from V0 to V1, but right now it's a tool to process content from Markdown and let you render it with React in any way you want. And it's especially good for technical content and for documentation, where it has a lot of helpers for code blocks, and you can build any type of layout, really. We have a few in the documentation that you can copy and use, but it has a freedom to do anything you can do with React. You can render it.
Yeah, I think the first time I saw your content was a scrolly coding demo years and years ago, and it just blew my mind of how well it did at communicating what was happening on the page. It has lots of nice animations that come in from the side. It highlights lines, and it's all based on Markdown.
So when I first saw CodeHike, as like Andrew was saying, it was the thing that stood out to me was mostly is highlighting line numbers as you sort of went along, scroll through the example. What sort of motivated creating that? How did you get to the point where you're okay, I need a tool like this, and for the initial goals, what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, so that's how all started. It was actually in a blog post I was writing. I think it was 2017. When everyone was using Medium, the blogging platform. So I was writing a series of blog posts about how to build your own React, right? It went step by step how to build a mini React from scratch, and I put a lot of effort in the content of those blog posts, but the medium was felt very limiting to the way of how to present that content to the user. It feels like I have some let me see how I can put it easy. It feels like you have all the concepts in my head, and when I put it in Medium, the blogging platform, it flattened out all the content, and I couldn't explain that as good as I want. So it was very frustrating also, because the web is a very powerful medium with small m, not big M, uh, and it was I couldn't use it to express it in the way I want. So that took me on a long trip to finally build my own blog, my own blog with just one blog post. It took me a lot of time to build, uh, but now I had the freedom to present the content the way I wanted. And well, I rewrote the blog posts, and also it was at the same time that the React team was rewriting React, so the content was new too. So I took that as an opportunity to build it in a richer way, like in a more expressive way, and it really like it had like a really good reception from everyone. I saw a lot of people sharing it. It was like in the front page of Hacker News for almost one day, and still now people are still sharing that blog post from 6 years ago. So I think that the presentation of the content matter a lot in the way that like people received that blog post. It wasn't just the content, but I think mostly was the presentation. So yeah, and that's like for that blog, I used like the first version of CodeHike. I mean, it was inside the blog. It wasn't a library then, but yeah, that was like the first version.
Yeah, we had Josh Kamau on a few episodes ago, and he mentioned that like you want to code for the medium you're in. You don't want to just produce a dead fish when you're on a website where you can produce very rich content experiences, and it is definitely a much richer content experience when presenting stuff with CodeHike. You mentioned that a lot has changed from 0 to 1, and probably a lot has changed in the React ecosystem since you wrote that first demo. So what was the journey like going from 0 to 1, and what work did it take?
Well, yeah. So the I don't know how to call the pre V1, so V0, was like a set of components, of predefined components. Like you had like that scrolly coding layout. You have another one with like was kind of tabs but different. You have like a slideshow, but you can only use that component and maybe style them with CSS and good luck. Like that's all. So with B1, I wanted to not provide any component, any predefined component, and let like the user build those components, like use whatever component they want. I also provide those components as examples in the docs, kind of what like ChatCN does. You know, it's very popular right now to just provide the code and now it's your problem. Uh, so yeah, so that was the biggest change. That is now you can do a lot more stuff with CodeHack V1, but it's also harder because you have to do it yourself, right? So that's the trade-off. I'm pretty happy with that trade-off. Some people aren't as happy, but maybe because it's early, and the idea is that the ecosystem provide those components for you. If you want something that is plug and play and you have it like that, but it's there are some companies that are already using V1 and they are really happy with the flexibility. So I think it was a good choice.
I'd like to thank the WorkOS team for sponsoring this week's episode. If you're a founder, an early stage engineer, you've probably been in that moment where you get your first enterprise customer through the door and they've got this long checklist of features that they need. SAML, SEIM, audit logs, RBAC, and you're just like, okay, well, there goes our whole backlog. And that's where WorkOS comes in. It gives you a full suite of enterprise features. So single sign-on, directory sync, user management, audit logs, fine-grained auth. They even have their own secure credential storage vault solution. And this is all in a developer first platform. And the product is really good. The SDKs are clean. The APIs are super consistent. The docs are delightful. Like, example driven, this just makes sense. Everything feels designed for builders who just want to get work done and focus on their product. So instead of burning weeks building all these things yourself, and while your product languishes, give WorkOS a try. That's workos.com. Again, thanks to the WorkOS team for supporting us. Kind of the interesting thing here is, so CodeHike is a tool for making markdown content, like technical markdown content, have these like very rich presentations and displays. But that means like you have to author the markdown in such a way that you can like find places to hook into. And you know, there's like, this has been a challenge for a long time. It's like, how do I enrich my markdown to like really show what I'm like wanting to show? And some people will break out into HTML, and then, you know, others like Stripe famously created MarkDoc because they felt a markdown just like wasn't enough. So talk a little bit about your approach. Is like, how do you express the things that CodeHike can do in markdown, and like what kind of decisions did you have to make, and like additions or whatever?
Yeah, so actually that was like the movement from B0 to B1 in CodeHike. I spent like a lot of time thinking what was really the problem I was trying to solve. And the problem I found, like the limitation with Markdown, is that Markdown is actually like flat. It's, if you go to the abstract syntax tree of Markdown, is a list of block components. You have like headings, paragraph, code blocks, quotes, I don't know, lists, and you have the root and all these lists of block elements. You don't have nesting, right? And that gives you something flat. And when you need to map that flat content to something, to a rich UI, you can kind of have a problem with, because that list of elements doesn't have any structure, and you can manipulate it very good. It's not like when you are doing a query to a database and you get like structured content, right? And you can manipulate that. Well, not structured content, structured data, and you can manipulate that data and render it as you want, right? So I found that was the problem that I was trying to solve. So we needed like a bit more structure in Markdown to allow the freedom to render it then in any way. So you need structure to get freedom. So wait, what was the question? I forgot.
Well, just like, how did you get over the limitations of Markdown? So I mean, just like, for example, it's like, oh, I want to display a code block, but I want it to have a highlight in it, and like Markdown doesn't have any opinions about that.
Yeah, so to overcome that, I try to think like the less amount of change to Markdown to allow that structure. Mostly is like to have like a hierarchy, you know. And when you open a Markdown file, for example, on VS Code, you get like a little panel with the outline. I don't know if you say that you have like an outline, and that has a hierarchy, right? Because it uses each heading from the Markdown file to form a tree, like different heading with different levels, and you have a tree. So what I try to do is to use that like inherent like hierarchy in the Markdown content to structure the content, and then to let the anyone use it from a React component. So what CodeHive does is to add little annotations to the headings and to some other places to then parse that those annotations and give structure to the content. And so when you import it in React, mostly in React, you can use it and have structured content.
Yeah, this is a much different approach than you would take if like you're just starting out in MDX. Like with MDX, you can create components. So like your
Mm.
first gut instinct might be let's just wrap things in components and start adding that structure. But as you said, Markdown really doesn't have indentation. So you get into this
Mm.
place where you're like interweaving JSX and Markdown and it gets super messy. And I'm a pretty big fan of this annotation style that seems very light on the actual like impact upon the content.
And it's also trying to keep like, if you change it too much, all the tooling that already use Markdown it start to break. So that's one that was also one of the idea to make it minimal. So I don't know if you open a Markdown file that uses code hike annotations in GitHub, for example, it's still very readable. It's not something very strange, right? And it also uses like all the tooling in VS Code. For example, you have the outline, and it's really good for when you have a big file with many sections. You can like navigate the code with that outline, or also collapse the headings. When you collapse one heading, you collapse all the section, and that's like I use it a lot when I'm authoring content in Markdown that use code hike annotation. I use it a lot, and it's very useful.
Yeah, I like a lot of in the examples. So if you're doing like something like code folding, you just have a comment inside the code block, or just like which would control the code folding. And I mean, it's nice because like even if that renders, that's fine. It's just a comment, you know. So somebody copied the raw
Mm.
code and like paste it in their code base or whatever, the comment's not going to break the code. So it like it's a nice approach, and it reminds me in some ways of like some of the stuff that Shiki 2 slash, right, the library that kind of lets you do type annotations and stuff.
No, no, we use similar something similar. We like the same features, but it's not Shiki slash. Yeah.
Let's dive into that a little bit because you created your whole own syntax highlighting library. So why did you do that, and like why didn't you just choose one of
Mhm.
the off the shelf ones like Shiki?
Yeah. Well, that it's actually like Shiki and Lighter, which is the code highlighting library that I use for code hike. They are both like a layer above the VS Code syntax highlighter. So it's not a super big layer. Like it's small. So it's a small library. And yeah, I needed something custom because of the way I use annotations inside code blocks, which are comments. So I need to like process those comments at the syntax highlighting time. So yeah, that was the reason, and it's really good how Shiki, especially how Anthony Fu, which is the maintainer of Shiki now, he's very good at open source. So uh, most of the improvements to Shiki, they are like separate packages, and so we can benefit from that too. And that's all because of how Anthony is so good at doing open source. It's like a machine. I don't know how he does it.
Yeah, there are those few people in the community that are just like powerhouses, and it's like,
Mhm.
how do you do it? With a lot of help, that's the answer. So an interesting thing around Shiki or around your code highlighter, brighter is it or lighter?
Lighter, yeah.
Lighter is it integrates with React server components, and Code Hike as a whole is very server components focused. And from
Mm.
what I saw from the outside, it felt like a lot of 1.0 was like, oh no, React server components came out. How does this change how we look at this problem? So, how have you used React server components throughout these projects to make it easier?
Yeah, it was actually like one of the reasons to do the V1, because there were a lot of features that if I wanted to implement it without React Server components, I would have to do it in Rehype plugins or Remark plugins, which are plugins that run at build time. Uh, they are part of the markdown pipeline. I don't want to get too specific, but now with React Server components, I can leave that to the user, because when you use Koha, you only like you use any React component you want to render the content, and that can also be a server component. So a big one is syntax highlighting. Like you can do whatever you want before or after syntax highlighting. Uh, Before B1, you need like to add configuration to the remark plugin that does the highlighting, and it was kind of limiting the amount of things you can do. But now you can do whatever you want because it's your React component. I provide some examples. Like one of them is something similar to Shiki slash, which is adding some TypeScript information to TypeScript code blocks. But yeah, there are a lot of use cases where you can take advantage of React Server components for content websites specifically.
Yeah, I built out my own like storybook replacement, and I found like at almost every turn, it's like, wow, this is easier and less intensive.
Yeah,
Markdown being a big one of them. Like before React Server components, Markdown in React components was a whole lot of not fun, just because it's like, I have a string of Markdown. How do I render that on the client?
mm,
And then you get into huge libraries with lots of trade offs. But when you like kind of pare that back and make it a server components thing, it's like, wow, I can actually throw out all those
yeah,
libraries and start thinking of things in primitives and like the libraries that those libraries used, and like suddenly the world opens up.
yeah. Gives you a lot more flexibility, and it's also like it was kind of when they launched, when React Server components is, it has this server, right, in
Mhm.
the React Server component, that people are sometimes confused that you can also use them at build time. So it's not that you need a server, and that's great for content website, for static website, because you are using React to do things that otherwise you will have to know how to write a remark plugin or a rehype plugin, and it's just for the developer experience, just much better.
Yeah, I think that's still a big confusion in the React community is like server components. Yes, there's a server, but the server could be the build server, and it doesn't actually mean that you need to be running a server all the time. Um,
Yeah.
so I want to talk a little bit about a post that you had written semi recently, "The Curse of Markdown,"
Mm.
and just sort of like maybe you can just sort of reframe the story that you're telling here, because I think it's really fascinating. Yeah, do you want to tell us about the curse of Markdown?
So when you have a new technology or a new medium, you usually have like three phases. The first phase is when you like people copy things from before, from old media or old technologies. Like for example, when the first year of TV, it was just radio shows, or the first car was a horse cart without the horse. I don't know. So that's like the skeuomorphic phase, right? That where you are copying things from the past. Then you have like an exploration phase where people are start exploring new ways of doing things, new formats, and most of them fail, but some of these format like stick. And you have like the last phase where you have like more like formats more native to the new medium, right? Like taking advantage of these new like tools or medium or and uh, like well we talked before, like the content websites are most content websites are like in the first phase, right? It's kind of the same as you open any content website, it's mostly like a book or a magazine. And I blame Markdown for that, and that's what I call it, the curse of Markdown, because Markdown is so good that people don't don't want to leave it and do different things. So the trade-off between the cost of doing something and the benefits of of doing it with Markdown, since the cost is so slow because it has so good tooling and it's so simple to use, we stayed in the safe place of the this skeuomorphic phase where we copy all media. And and well, this takes to what I talked before about the limits of Markdown, and what can we do to make it more like usable for building like richer uh, presentations presentation of content. So yeah, that's what I call the curse. Like that Markdown is so good that it isn't letting us explore new ways of doing things.
Yeah, I think going back to, again, looping back to a conversation earlier, part of it is the expressivity that is sort of missing out. So Markdown is famously not standard. There's like GitHub flavored Markdown, and there's like a bunch of other like kind of types of Markdown. Of course, now we have MDX components in Markdown. So I wanted just to talk briefly about your thoughts on like Markdown standards and portability. So it's like as you're adding new components to CodeHike that might require some extra, it's like, oh, you have to add this after the language in the code fence, or you have to add this comment, or you need to add this like special bang bang, or like whatever it may be. It's like, how do you sort of like work through the trade-off of like extra syntax to get to this like richness that you ultimately want?
Yeah, so that's a like a real problem, or even a real reason for not using CodeHike, because you are using like this non-standard annotation. Well, nothing is standard right now, but portability is one of the reasons that why Markdown is so good. That's why I mentioned I tried. My priority was to add the minimal changes to Markdown, or minimal annotations to achieve what I wanted, and also to make them easy to search and replace in case needed, and also don't break any tooling that already use Markdown. So it's not ideal, but I mean we took some measurements to avoid problems. But yeah, and yeah, Markdown is so popular that yeah, it has so many flavors that it's just part of it now.
It must be hard.
I consider that using a different extension too, but that will mean a lot of work to make tooling work too. So we are here.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think this landed out in a good place, though, right? You've made some really good trade-offs, and this is just a part of the story. So it's like, if you were to go down the markdoc road and you're like, oh, I'm going to make a new, markup language, then you have to like convince everyone that they should use it, and then you have to write all the tools and the LSP and all the other stuff and do all the marketing and the mind share, and it's like you just like want to make good rich document experiences, not like boil the ocean.
Yeah, true.
It must be hard to walk this line in some cases, though, because it's probably very tempting sometimes to be like, oh, I want this experience, and I'm kind of like trapped with exclamation points and comments. Has there ever been a time where you've wanted to go over that line, but had to pull yourself back?
At first, like before, like I took a very long time before V1 to define what I really wanted. So I kind of already know all the things I want. There are some things that I haven't added yet, but I have like I know how to add them because I already planned them. So there isn't like now is not that I think, oh, I want to add this stuff. Like I try like a lot of different syntaxes, a lot of ways, and I'm really happy. Well, not really happy, but from all the options, this one is the one that makes me happier, and it's already has all the features I need.
So on the road to 1.0, during the V0 days, you had a pretty unique way to fund the project. On the website, you had a bunch of examples with all your code hike code, but some of them were locked behind like support
Mhm.
tiers. So can you explain that methodology to us and how it went?
Yeah, that was like I was experimenting like all the open source project, trying to
Mhm.
find a way to make it sustainable. Um, and I tried that like mostly to bring attention to people that, hey, this project needs sponsors, because I I also leave it like if you open the DevTools, you can like unlock the 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 example from the DevTools, and also the examples were open source too. So it wasn't uh, like a real paywall, but it was good to bring like attention to people that, hey, uh, maybe you can sponsor this thing, and also like give some credit. Like each example has like five people that sponsored the exam the project, and I use it to unlock that example, and it worked. But I also realized that you don't you don't make a project sustainable with just uh, people sponsoring it. You need like companies and like bigger bigger sponsorships, because if it's just people sponsoring with $10 each, you need like a lot of people. Uh, so yeah, but yeah, it was fun. I I also got one issue in GitHub accusing me of of killing people or something like that, because it's every time you put you hide an example, you are taking time from people, and if you sum all the time that people spend, you kill like, I don't know. uh yeah, people are very entitled sometimes.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's the unfortunate thing about open source is that I think people get so used to having something free when you like dare say, "Oh wait, I need to make a living, and I spent a lot of time on this, and I like working on it, and I would like to keep working on it. Please help me." They're just like, "No."
Yeah, people. I don't care about people get angry with that type of approach. I saw that there are a couple more projects now doing that too, and I saw in Twitter like people complaining about that, and it's so frustrating.
So, how's the transition to the new funding model? So you've got like corporate sponsors now. Is that going well? Do you feel like the project's more sustainable?
Yeah, I right now I have only one corporate sponsor. I should have more, but now I'm focusing more on, since I think the project is in a good state now. I'm focusing more on working with companies to help them adopt CodeHive. And since I'm the leading expert in CodeHive, can charge uh, good money for that. So I'm taking that approach now. And it's also very useful for me to like for dog fooding, like to using the library. And so far it's like I didn't have to make too much changes to use it. So that's why I think it's in a good state. I still have to improve like the dogs, like always the dogs, and maybe some more exposure or marketing or go to conferences and all that part of a project that also takes time.
So, in creating Code Hike, you've created a whole bunch of components of varying complexity. I was flipping through the docs, and there's so many that like speak to me, like the transpile code block. Amazing. You write TypeScript, it shows TypeScript and JavaScript. Super cool. Of the components you've created so far, which has been your favorite, and which one's been the hardest to create?
Good question. Uh, One of my favorites is it's kind of small, and a small thing is uh, one that folds inline code. Like I use it for specifically for Tailwind classes. When you have a code sample with a very long Tailwind class, so I use that with a regular expression, an annotation with a regular expression, and it's an annotation that folds that regular expression into like three dots, and when you click it, it expands, but it makes the code blocks much like cleaner. And well, also tooltips. Like I think tooltips are so good at providing information on demand, and with Code you can put them anywhere. You can put it in the text or you can put it in the code, and you can put code inside the tooltip, so it's really useful. And then there's some components that compare like two things. Like it may be code and code. Like for example, I know you have a JavaScript and TypeScript, and you want to match things. And when you hover one side, it shows you like it highlights the other side that correspond with what you're hovering. And that's good. Not only in code in both sides, but code and the demo in the other side. It's it's very useful too, and I think it helps a lot with very complex things, that when you're trying to explain complex things, and having it like the option to like interact and show you the mapping between the two sides is very useful. Which one is the hardest? uh, I don't know.
The whole thing.
Maybe uh, we used to have in before V1 some code blocks that also run like the demo with using something like web containers or Sandpack, which is another thing that they can run uh, things in the browser, and that was hard because of the integration, mostly with Sandpack or web containers. And but I don't even have an example now with V1. Something I'm missing. But it's also because it's very like specific to a particular like thing you are doing, so it's hard to put generic examples.
So it sounds like Code Hike is pretty stable. You've kind of got like a lot of the things that you wanted to do with it done. You're sort of working with companies now to help integrate it. But it sort of begs the question is like, I'm sure you still have like a list of things that you really, really want to do. And like, what does that look like for you? What does the future of Code Hike look like?
Well, it's mostly around CodeHack, not really in CodeHack. There are a few things that I still want to add to CodeHack, to CodeHack. But yeah, there are small things, but I really want to work on showing people like the power of CodeHack. So that means building like examples or working with companies to help them build the things. And so most of my to-do list is in that part of the but also there's tooling that I would love to do, because with now that you have like structured markdown, you can have like schemas too, right? So you can use a pseudo schema and define the the shape of the content, and when you have like something that isn't the shape you want, you can throw an error. But you could also use that schema for better authoring experience. Right now, as I say, I use the outline of VS Code a lot to navigate. But if I already know the schema of the content, it could be much easier to navigate and to write the content and to edit it. But I'm realistic, and I know that won't happen in the near future. But that is something that I would love to have.
So you said you've been working with companies. Is there any company that shipped like a very Code Hike enhanced documentation experience yet?
I know the first one. I didn't work with them, but the first adopter of V1 was Twilio. They they did some cool stuff. I saw recently. Also, he's releasing an AI course, and he's using a version of this scrolly coding that is really nice. And currently, I'm working with Solana too. I think this week we released the API reference with some cool interactions.
Yeah, those are some great examples. So wrapping up here, we always like to ask a future-facing question, and for you, it's what do you think the future of content authoring is? We got a whole bunch of markdown. It kind of
Mm,
took the world by storm, I'd say, in the last like 10 to 15 years. Do you think that's the format of
yeah.
the future, or will we see something new come about?
Well, now with all the LLMs generating Markdown, the amount of Markdown generated every day has skyrocketed, right? So it definitely will be a big part of the future. And the future of content in general, like I really like how LLMs in general, or AI generates, like, can customize the content to a specific user, right? So it can personalize it, summarize it, give it in the right level of abstraction. That's great, but what I think is missing is this thing we were talking about, like the right presentation, like the right level of richness in the response. Uh, and I mean, I tell you some experiments I've been doing, that you ask a question to a ChatGPT, for example, and it gives you like Markdown back, right? I've been doing some experiments where I ask ChatGPT to, I ask, the prompt is like this. So give me the description of the best UI possible that answers this question, right? And then I take that description, I put it in V0, for example, or in Bolt, those UI generation tools, and it's not that good. Like I wish that will. I think in the future it will be much better, and also the speed right now of doing all that is obviously slow, but I expect it to get better, and I'm excited for that to get better, because it will be amazing if it happens, right? Like to have something that gives you like that content in the best way possible to consume it. Amazing.
Yeah, it would be an interesting world where you have a bunch of non-technical people writing markdown content and then just being like highlighting blocks and being like, now present this the best way you can to the user, and then like getting like good
Yeah.
bespoke experiences. That would be quite the world to live in. Well, that wraps it up for our questions this week, Rodrigo. Thank you for coming on. This was a very interesting jaunt into the world of Code Hike and all the amazing work that you've done. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And Code Hike is excellent. I'm excited to see what you do with it in the future.
Thank you, guys. Bye bye.